Cinematherapy again. We've got one more chapter about cinematherapy, and then we get into social media. Anyway, okay, so this is the third chapter of the book, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Third chapter of your book. What are we talking about? Theory and application of cinematherapy. Effective role models. Sometimes the role models that the clients need are unavailable in real life, but can be found in films. From the fictionalized or real worlds of business, sports, entertainment, history, politics, and religion, people have always shaped themselves by reference to larger than life characters. Maybe not Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, but at least somebody. Role models may be larger than life, but be believable. They must be similar to us in some respects, family background, life experience, vocation, lifestyle, or in conflicts they face. The primary issue in role model compatibility is whether clients can project themselves into a desirable character, seeing themselves as they have been, are today, or would like to become in the future. And of course, that's a picture of McLovin. Strangest fake ID in the world. uh, One way to select a role model for a client is to conceptualize an ideal mentor and then choose a film that features such a character. It is recommended that role models who struggle with and overcome the same issues that the client faces will allow them to learn from a role model's experience. Clients can benefit from film characters' lessons. And of course, Field of Dreams, as I keep telling you, Field of Dreams was filmed about 30 miles north of here in Dyersville, Iowa. So Dyersville looks an awful lot like Lost Nation, strangely enough. Clients may be influenced by a fictional role model's negative traits as well as his positive ones. A therapist can inoculate a client against inappropriate identifications by cautioning beforehand what not to take from a character. And the reason I have Bridges of Madison County here is because in that film, the Clint Eastwood character had an affair with a farm wife in Madison County. Now, Madison County, strangely enough, is about 2 counties over from where I live, and there really are a lot of bridges, covered bridges in Madison County. And people take tours around the county, strangely enough. But of course, I don't remember seeing Clint Eastwood when I was driving through that area. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a good example of negative and positive traits. The positive traits that Ferris Bueller showed, this is an old movie, of course, starring Matthew Broderick. It wasn't his first movie. War Games was his first movie, but he had some positive traits and some negative traits. He's got spunk, of course, Ferris Bueller. Everybody likes him. He's good with computers. He has a great girlfriend. He's a good person. And he takes care of his friends. His negative traits, he tells a lot of lies. He's pretty conceited. He's fairly manipulative. He makes fun of people. He burns bridges with people he might need, and he's a little spoiled. More than a little spoiled, I would say. Dramatic role models can sometimes be preferable to real-life mentors. Real-life mentors often disappoint their proteges when they display human limitations. Role models in films may fall from grace, but then they work their way back. Clients learn that true heroes learn from their mistakes, and they can too. And of course, remember the Titans, Denzel Washington's character was a little bit arrogant, and but I guess that's really what he needed in order to bring the two groups together, the African Americans in that area and the white population. Really kind of an interesting though. That's one of the areas that I've lived in my life. Is that area where or Remember the Titans. It was actually was. Of course, I wasn't there. That was back in the 70s, and I was there to 1998 through 2000. So a little bit different. Things have changed. Therapeutic films should correspond to clients' narratives as closely as possible in terms of chronological age, socioeconomic background, education, values, and subject matter. Some clients are rigid, and others are. Oh, I haven't turned this into this thing, have I? I'm sorry. Some clients are rigid, and others are maybe more imaginative, which dictates what films will benefit each. Films should be selected to mirror the client in as many ways as possible. The Billionaire Boys Club, probably not. I don't know. Maybe some of you are billionaires, but and some of you may want to be billionaires. I certainly don't want to be a billionaire. Money's not that important to me. Research has shown that values shared between films and the client are more critical than demographics. Mismatches may occur when therapists make film assignments that reflect their own values rather than their clients'. To prevent this from happening, therapists should bear in mind regional standards and should discuss potentially offensive aspects of a film before making an assignment. And of course, this is Monster Ball, one of the last movies that Heath Ledger made. Has Billy Bob Thornton and one of the most beautiful women in the world, Halle Berry. Um, the Halle Berry, her husband has has murdered somebody, and he's on death row, and she's having problems with her son, and then her son gets hit by a car. Billy Bob Thornton is there. It drives by and sees her plight, and he tries to help her. And at that point, he realizes that all people are the same, um, and it goes on from there. But uh, potentially you wouldn't show this movie to somebody from the South because they might be offended. The subject matter of a film should match the presenting problem of a client. A single film can be helpful to clients with several different concerns. The film, When a Man Loves a Woman, deals with a woman struggling to recover from alcoholism, but it also deals with relationship difficulties, stereotypic male female roles, and dysfunctional communication. And that is not all that's in that film. The other part of the film is that Meg Ryan's character ignores her daughter, and that is really what triggers the whole that she needs to get sober situation. And I see that as a really important part of the film, the fact that she um, doesn't deal with her daughter correctly. And actually, through a lot of the film, she has a problem dealing with her daughter, which may be the reason why she drinks. Personal taste varies, and therapists should work with films that the client prefers. Occasionally, clients will prefer films that the therapists do not. Failure to take into account a client's taste in films will result in poor adherence to watching schedules. Assigning films that the clients don't prefer is like forcing them to learn a new tongue, the therapist's movie preferences. And of course, I really don't like watching movies about the mafia. I think it's kind of silly, um, as if we're all. I mean, gangs do exist everywhere, but the mafia is kind of controlling, and it's pretty much an urban situation. So I really don't see a need to watch movies about the mafia. Start with films that the client has already seen. They should talk openly about the movie, thus showing their preferences. The therapist should select a movie that is similar to the movie the client has described. The therapist should not overlook underlying themes for the major theme they are trying to display. Discuss scenes that might be offensive, language, sex, nudity, and violence. Objections should lead to selecting an alternative film. The therapist should clarify the intent when assigning a film in which a client might mistake the role identification. The client should be advised to stop the film if they strongly dislike it. And of course, this is Brokeback Mountain about two cowboys that realize that they have physical desires for one another, and they act on those desires, and it really doesn't fit the stereotype, and that's part of the problem, of course, and that's why the movie was made. But I mean, you wouldn't have your client watch this movie, if they were having problems with their sexual orientation. Yes, they might. You might assign this movie, but otherwise, I mean, why would you assign the movie? Um, Poor communication between husbands and wives. Yeah, but I mean, they're the biggest part of the movie is the affair between Heath Ledger's character and Jake Gyllenhaal's character. Clients should be aware that their film suggestions are important and that they may be therapeutically more useful than those selected by the therapist. The films that the client likes the most may be unremarkable to the therapist. Any film that leads to the client opening up and revealing their true feelings is a good film. And this is one of the reasons why you can talk about films. A lot of times you have a really difficult time getting your client to open up. If you start talking about movies, then possibly that will strike a chord with them, and they will begin to talk, and that's really what you're trying to get this individual to do. So that this is just a tool, as I said before. It's just a tool to get to where the client has a problem. A lot of times they will talk about a similar problem in a movie, and then you can move from the movie into their own lives. I mean, that's part of what cinema therapy is about. And like I said, it's just a tool. It isn't therapy. It isn't the therapy. It is a tool to be used in therapy. And without talking to the client about the movies, then it really potentially hasn't worked. You're really not doing anything. So you need to not only assign movies that fit, but you also need to assign. You need to talk about them afterwards, if possible. Sometimes you will get from the client that they already understand what's going on, and you really don't have to talk about it. Films are ideal metaphors for problem solving because they involve thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And of course, that's what happens in Back to the Future. Michael J. Fox's character goes back to the future, or he goes into the past, and now he has to figure out how to get back. There's a the thesis is you can time travel. The antithesis is that the problem that he has is that he doesn't have the power to get back because they need I don't know some 7 gigawatts of power or something, and the only way you can get that is with a burst of lightning in the past, of course. Um, and then of course they have to figure this whole thing out. The other problem is, of course, Michael J. Fox's character is changing the past, and by changing the past, he's changing the future, which involves him, in which case he'll disappear if he's not very careful. The character experiences a crisis, tries out several unsuccessful responses, and ultimately finds a resolution. Although films rarely provide exact solutions that clients can imitate in their own lives, they frequently act metaphorically to generate new approaches. At least they'll try. Ideally, the client will identify with the main characters, test out options considered by the characters, and find points of agreement as well as disagreement with the resolutions. In follow-up discussions with the therapist will reinforce the experience by emphasizing the explicit impressions by asking the client to describe the actions taken by the characters and analyzing whether they were helpful or not. Snowpiercer is about global warming, actually, um, and the Earth is thrown into another ice age, and they're trying to figure out how to survive. Bringing the client back to earth, the client should critically evaluate the decisions made by characters in a film because a movie protagonist's choices may not be the best for them. When the client begins to over-identify with a hero who throws a caution to the wind, the therapist needs to celebrate the spirit while grounding the experience. Truth or Dare? I don't remember this movie. I can't remember why I put it in here. A client described in the text after watching Ruby in Paradise decided to quit her job and open a craft store. The therapist had her compare her situation with that of Rudy in the football movie Rudy, who had multiple fallback plans in case his dreams of Notre Dame football didn't materialize. Ruby and Rudy. The client compromised by renting a booth at an arts and crafts cooperative, and this is Ruby in Paradise. She finds herself, and then she buys a boutique or something. And so, when the therapist had the client watch the movie, she decided to do what Ruby did. Instead, she needed to do what Rudy did. An indirect effect is the impression that a client takes from an incidental aspect of a film, an impression not dependent on the film's major theme. The effect lingers long after the client sees the film and may be out of proportion to its narrative intent because of the psychological needs of the client at the time of viewing. And of course, there's a lot about Avatar. There's a lot of negatives and positives about Avatar. One of the negatives is that they are displacing an indigenous species, an indigenous group of people, um, and they are they're changing them, and that's really one of the things that is fairly negative about what has happened in the Americas, of course. Sometimes films are chosen not because they contain characters who are role models or their themes are similar to clients' problems, but because the film as a whole offers a healing experience. Watching the film brings about a better frame of mind, a sense of being connected with the universe, and renewed hope. And Stendhal delivers that kind of a movie. Makes you feel good in the end. Uh, the Edward James Olmos, the teacher, is kind of mean and he's kind of pushy and he thinks he has all the answers. So it's he's not exactly a role model for a good teacher. He does keep at the students. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure if the class was a special class, an elite class, or not, but they were he was able to get them to understand calculus. The answer to many of life's problems can be found in the movies. The most therapeutic dilemma and the most challenging job of the therapist is to help a client out of denial. Helping them out of their denial can be very difficult and time extensive. Denial is the inability to see a situation, a life problem, as it is affecting their lives and future. And of course, this is the movie Don't Look Up. It's about a meteor hitting the Earth. In the end, it does. It hits the Earth, and everybody is evaporated except the president. this is, and Meryl Streep plays the president. And it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, these two individuals that are trying to get everybody to do something about it. Interesting movie. One of the interesting things about the movie was that they had a plan to destroy the or to throw the meteor off course so that it wouldn't strike the Earth, and it got involved. It got all wrapped up in politics, and that was it. Didn't work. Don't worry, there was a rocket ship that took off for a planet where people could live. A therapist's technique for helping a client out of denial is to use what the movie industry refers to as suspension of disbelief. Suspending one's disbelief comes about when a movie or a book is so strong and real in its presentation that the viewer forgets that they are watching a story. And some people felt that way about Matrix, as weird as that may seem. If you're watching a movie and you think that you're watching reality, then that's suspension of disbelief. The therapist needs to get his clients to suspend their disbelief and accept the story in the film as real life situations. They may be able to see themselves, their family, or their friends in the characters in the film. Suspension of disbelief is the mirror image of denial. If a movie can bring out an emotional attachment to the stories and characters long enough, it can help a client deal with their own problems and issues. And I've never really seen the whistleblower, so but I don't. I put it in there. Um, some therapists have found that clients can move more rapidly through the denial stage of their treatment when they use movies to bring themselves out of denial. People tend to the opposite of what they see and experience. With movies, people learn what they should do in life by watching the opposite. They learn what to do by seeing the wrong way of doing things. I don't know why I put 12 years as a slave in here uh, on this slide, but I did. One of the goals of films and therapy is to use the movies to unlock the doors in the client's memories, the doors that have been sealed shut for one reason or another. The movies can unlock the doors to some of the memories that might have been trying to process as dreams. Watching a movie that helps the client deal with the healing may be perpetuated by a dream that creates the continuation of the healing process. Thank you for your service is how difficult it is for people that have been traumatized in combat to be reminded. Reminded is not the right word. Um, it's when somebody says thank you for your service. Of course, I was in the military for 12 years, but I was in the military. I got out in '83, so and you know it's a lot of water under the bridge. Um, thank you for your, this. It's difficult to hear people say thank you for your service because you don't know what to say. Um, you know, is that and the other question is that enough just to say thank you for your service? It's a tough question, and it's one that I'm still dealing with. Thank you for your service is something that people haven't done. Of course, I was in Vietnam, and people weren't thanking anybody for their service in Vietnam. So yeah, it's a little tough. It's kind of interesting. Something I'm still dealing with. Movies may help the client put to rest conflicting feelings that they have been carrying around for years. Clients will sometimes try to drown the weight of the feelings in alcohol, hide them behind indiscriminate sex, or curb them with fatigue of a workaholic. Movies can sometimes free the client to heal, and dreams from the movie and healing add to the process. And of course, that's what we're hoping to do. I don't remember this movie, Rabbit Hole. The only way out is through the rabbit hole. I don't remember what the premise was. Men's and women's issues are the most recurring theme in therapy, and you can take that one to the bank. The reality is, even if they're not talking about a problem in a relationship, it's usually front and center. It's either whatever's happening is causing a problem in their relationship, where the relationship is the basis of their problem. But there's always a problem in the relationship. Um, a lot of times people say he never listens to me. It's like talking to a brick wall. We used to have sex all the time. Since we started living together, I might as well be celibate. She won't do anything around the house. I'm getting tired of this stuff. And that's actually what Blue Valentine is about. It's a love story um, about two people that are growing apart. And of course, relationships are really important. Marriage is tough. Relationships are tough. Um, People don't want to make mistakes because it hurts and it's costly. It's tough. So one of the things you need to remember is if they say the problem is one thing, probably the relationship has something to do with it, and that needs to be dealt with as well. Looking at the research done on the efficacy of cinema therapy, we can see that there was a wave of cinema therapy use in the United States at the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, but less discussion about it in the 2010s and 2020s. There may be many reasons for this, from fear of a new technique to the inability to grasp the concept. And one of the things that you need to remember is a lot of people don't like to change. College professors, they will use the same textbook for decades. I've used the same Psych 255 physiological psych book for the last 15 years. It's a good book, or at least I tell myself that. Maybe there are better books out there. But I mean, this is just the way the world works. So if you have a therapist that's been doing therapy in a specific way, and somebody says, "Well, maybe you ought to use movies," he first of all he's got to take classes in cinema therapy before he can use it, and then he can start using it. And it's just a different idea, you know. It doesn't fit with, no, I do CBT, dude. I don't do that kind of stuff. You know, I'm a gestaltist. I do Freudian therapy. I don't do that cinema stuff. But the reality is, and I keep telling you guys this, um, people are spending a lot of time on their devices. They're watching movies on their cell phones. People, they're spending just a ton of time um, watching the screen. I certainly do. Well, because I'm doing lectures, but so this may be the wave of this may be something that we can use. The fact that people are on social media all the time. The fact that people seem to be gaming all the time. The fact that people are binge watching Stranger Things on Netflix. We can use this, and there may be a pathology connected to it, but we can create a healing atmosphere with some of these shows, with some of the things that our clients are looking at. We can do this, and just because it hasn't been embraced by the entire psychological community doesn't mean that you can't use this. Now, it's possible that I'm not saying that you should use cinema therapy with every client that comes in the door, but if you've got a teenager or a young adult, a millennial that's been had their nose on in television and in the computer all their lives, then this is a good way to get them to come out of their shell. We build barriers against what we are in denial about what our problems are, and this may be the way to do it. This may be the way to bring them out. This may be, and people are potentially ignoring this because, gee, that's so 20th end of 20th century, beginning of 21st century. This is the 2020s. We don't do this kind of stuff. Well, it's an idea that started in at the end of the 20th century. in the beginning of the 21st century, but it may have been a good idea that people ignored. So you as counselors, I mean, if this fits, if this works, use it. I mean, every tool in your every arrow in your quiver, as they say. So we're going to look at some of the research on cinema therapy. This is research by Sharp, Smith, and Cole. It's called Cinema Therapy, Metaphorically Promoting Therapeutic Change. That is Sharp. Sharp and her colleagues seem to be very careful about suggesting that cinema therapy works, and in fact complain that the paucity of research on the topic and suggest increased research in the future. And of course, this was done in 2002, right after cinema therapy started. There were a lot of people that were saying this is never going to work. It can't work. And Sharp, Smith, and Cole looks like they were on that bandwagon. Emphasizing the word metaphor, the authors suggest that using film as a metaphor allows the client to experience the feelings of the film without the interference of intellect and analysis. And of course, that's really not what we've been telling you. But we're going to look at some other research. The example they give is interesting. Abby is a 15-year-old girl that the parents think might be getting sexually active with her boyfriend. Neither the parents or Abby feel comfortable talking about sex, so the therapist assigns the movie For Keeps, a movie about a pregnancy with a teen couple for the film for the family to watch. In the follow-up session, the parents are able to discuss their fear of Abby getting pregnant and the consequences. All parties are able to discuss sex through the characters in the movie. This is a Molly Ringwald movie, 2002. Another piece of therapy. This one comes out of Romania, and I learned how to say her name. Her name is Sofia Dumtrake. The effects of a cinema therapy group on diminishing anxiety in young people. And it comes out of, as I said, it comes out of Romania. It came out in 2014. There is Ms. Dumtrake, Dr. Dumtrake, excuse me. This research comes out of Romania, as I said. Dumtrake in 2014 took 60 subjects between the ages of 19 and 22 and divided them into 30 in the control group and 30 in the experimental group. She measured the anxiety levels of all the subjects. With the experimental group, Dumtrake showed weekly sessions of movies that were based on existential and relational problematic nucleus. Okay. The movies covered the following topics: childhood and family universe, couple relationships, social relationships, adjustment, maladjustment, exclusion, discrimination, justice, equality, morality, responsibility, relationships with oneself, themes of personal development and death, self-knowledge and spiritual interests, relation between natural, artificial, normal, supernatural, and paranormal, topics regarding the existential meaning. And this, I put this picture in here because that is what people from Romania look like. That's what some of the people from Romania look like. There is a fairly large population of Roma, Romani, if you have any clue who that is. Those are people that are a term that you probably recognize is the word gypsy. So they tend to be dark-haired. She may potentially be a gypsy. They have a little bit darker complexion. I don't think Dumtrake is. Well, the anxiety level of the control group tested basically the same both during the initial testing and after 3 months. The experimental group tested significantly lower after 3 months of cinema therapy. Dumtrake in 2014 found that the group was highly receptive to this work method by means of movies. The participants explored their inner universe by identifying themselves with some characters or due to the central themes offered by the movie. Thus, they re-signified their personal universe they restructured and transformed their own life script. And that is from page 720 in the article. Another piece of research, this came out in 2018. Kusumdiwa and Juliantika, they are Indonesian, I think. The effectiveness of cinema therapy to improve student empathy. And there they are. There's the two authors of the paper. The research was done in Indonesia, as I said before. Kusum Dewi and Julian Tika, 2018, wanted to see if cinema therapy would raise the empathy level of students with low empathy. The subjects were 15 to 16-year-old students who scored low on an empathy scale in a pre-test situation. Indonesia is the most populous Muslim country in the world and maintains a strong collectivist society. Now, this is something that you need to understand what's going on here. So if these people aren't showing empathy, it means that they aren't showing, they're not acting like a very good collectivist people. And also, most of the countries where the Muslim religion is practiced, they are collectivist societies. So their empathy is really important to maintain this mindset, this collectivist mindset. The research was conducted at a high school with a Western curriculum, and of course, that may be one of the reasons why the individuals were showing very little empathy and why they weren't acting collectivistically. Cinema therapy was conducted in 5 sessions using films that emphasize the following attributes: empathizing with others, caring for others, solidarity with friends, cooperating with others, and helping others. After the therapy, the students were given a post-test. Now, this is one of the films that they showed. Laskar Pelangi is the director of the film. After the cinema therapy, the students were given the post-test measuring their empathy level, and the group averaged an increased score of 22.4, with the lowest increasing 17 points and the highest increasing 28 points. Discussions after the films showed that the students felt empathy for the fictitious characters, and this transferred to an increased empathy score post-therapy. The Mirror Never Lies is about a young lady that is rejected because is rejected for a reason, and she tries to convince herself that she shouldn't be rejected just by looking in the mirror and not seeing what people say she looks like. The last movie is from Italy. I'm going to show you a picture of all these people. Sacalato, Salvato, Villa, Salvi, and Bottini are the 5 authors. And I forgot my ampersand. Through the Looking Glass, a scoping review of cinema and video therapy. And there you go. This was 2022. This is a more recent piece of research. And this is Sacalato. This is a meta-analysis looking at 38 studies dealing with cinema and video therapy from Italy. Criteria for eligibility included a research article, use of complex visual stimuli including video, film, or documentary, application of the techniques on the psychological or physical difficulties, and it had to be in the English language. There were 184 that were initially identified, but only 148 were disqualified for not meeting one of the 4 parameters of the study. And that is the second guy. I can't remember what his name was. Salvato. That's a picture of Salvato. 38 studies published between 1974 and 2018 were included in the study. 7 used classical cinema therapy, 9 used a video modeling approach, and 5 applied video peer modeling. 11 out of the 38 used a generic video treatment. And that's the third lady, Via. Yeah, that's Via. Traditional cinematherapy can be defined as a therapeutic technique in which a therapist selects commercial films and asks the client to see them alone or with specific other people, for example, family members. The therapist chooses some films that relate to the patient's difficulties and after a viewing session discusses with the patient the main themes that emerge from the movie. And that is the fourth author, Salvi. Traditional cinematherapy was found in the following research: Turley and Derdian in 1990, Heston and Cotman in 1997, Bierman et al. In 2003, Marsick in 2010, Garmaglia et al. In 2011, Ballard in 2012, and Agechi and Jinkos in 2017. And that's Bettini. I remember her name. The video modeling technique exposes clients to videos in which characters manifest specific skills that the client needs to learn. For example, learning how to interact with other people successfully. At the end of the video, the client can practice what they learned from the character. Video modeling is often combined with other types of therapy. Video modeling is often used with autism spectrum disorder. And that's actually where Bettini came in. She was a specialist in autism spectrum disorder. Via, this lady was in charge of movies in Italy. As weird as that sounds, she belonged to an organization that suggested and controlled films in Italy, and she was a counselor. He's a neuropsychologist, and so is she. She's a neuropsychologist. Video modeling was found in the following research: Charlop and Milstein in 1989, Reeve et al. In 2007, Scottoni in 2008, Coughlin et al. In 2009, Jones et al. In 2014, Koppel et al. In 2015, McPherson et al. In 2015, von Maffei et al. In 2015, and Walsh et al. In 2018. Humor has been used in cinematherapy by several researchers. Kamada in 2007 and 2008 screened humorous films for patients suffering from atopic dermatitis. And this is a picture of what atopic dermatitis looks like and other manifestations of this stress-related illness. Comic films reduced stress, reducing estradiol levels, which improved the client's symptoms. So humor is good. Gelkoff et al. In 2006 showed humorous films to patients suffering from schizophrenia 5 days a week for 3 months. Results showed a reduction of depression and anxiety levels. Golan et al. In 2010 and Jan et al. In 2018 were able to teach children with autism spectrum disorder to recognize 15 target emotions by showing cartoons of Thomas and Friends, Thomas the Train, and I think that one is Thomas. He's the one in the middle. The depictions are of trains with human faces. And they're very expressive faces. So when they are upset, you can see that they're upset. When they're angry, you can see that they're angry. And when they're surprised, of course, they make a very surprised face. And so they were using these cartoons to demonstrate faces that children with autism spectrum disorder, and one of the problems with autism spectrum disorder is that they don't recognize facial expressions or react to facial expressions. And they were using Thomas the Train to teach that. Cinematherapy and video modeling can treat various psychological difficulties, in particular conditions in healthy and pathological populations. Marsick in 2010 improved the understanding of the feelings of children of parental divorce by watching films about separation and divorce. Bierman et al. In 2003 showed that people preferred films conceived for their age and historical periods. The study used cinematherapy to treat young girls with legal and family problems, demonstrating enhanced compliance, cooperation, and understanding of their family problems. Cinematherapy and video modeling were shown to work with the following pathologies: autism spectrum disorder, addiction, schizophrenia, anxiety, dementia, anorexia nervosa, and learning disabilities. Now, so what you should take from this is that there have been studies out there to show that it works. Now, the interesting thing is that most of these studies were done overseas. As you saw, one was from Indonesia, one was from, wait a minute, Romania, and one was from Italy. So possibly this is a technique that's being used in other places, but not the United States. Um, I would encourage you to think about this, to think about using cinema therapy. We have one more week of talking about cinema therapy, and then we start social media. But I would advise you to think about it. If you can't make contact with somebody, if you're having difficulty getting people to talk, talking about something as inconsequential as the movie they watched last night, not a bad idea. It gets them out of their shell, brings them out of their shell, and potentially you can use that to communicate with your clients if you're having trouble communicating with your clients. Just a thought. It's something that was brand new back in the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century. It's something that has been, I don't know, forgotten. It's used overseas. Obviously, it's being used overseas in Europe and in Indonesia. So this is not something that is a fly-by-night idea. It sounds like a pretty good idea. I've never used it myself, but then again, I'm not counseling anymore. So next week we'll talk about something else. We'll finish up cinema therapy next week. Okay? Talk to you next week.